My name's Simon Costello. I'm one of the tutors on the Jack Greek Summer School, and in this video we're going to be looking at the aorist tense. This is the equivalent of what's normally called the simple past tense in English, the basic way of talking about something that's happened, where you simply add ed onto the end of the verb stem. So you can see on the screen there the example, we played, we've taken play and put ed on the end. Sometimes we need to change the spelling slightly, so we say said rather than said, spied with an I rather than with a Y, for example. But otherwise, that's relatively straightforward. However, if you speak to anyone who's learned English not as their first language, they will tell you there's a whole bunch of exceptions to that very straightforward rule. Plenty of verbs, and especially the common ones, don't do that at all, but change their stem to show that they are the simple past tense instead. Sometimes that's a pretty small change. So we've got run turning into ran. We just changed one letter in the stem. Sometimes that change is a bit more significant. So buy turns into bought. You can see a couple of letters, the B and the U are still there, but it's a pretty different stem. And occasionally there are a few verbs where the stems for the present and the past look nothing like each other. So go and went is probably the most obvious example of that in English. And we've explained this in detail because this is pretty much how it works in Greek as well. There are two ways to form the aorist tense: a simple one, which is the one that most verbs follow, and a different one, which involves changing the stem. So in one sense, it matches English quite closely. The first way is called normally the first aorist, although a few textbooks call it the weak aorist instead. It is the past tense, and so the verb needs to start with an augment. This normally means we're putting an epsilon at the front of the verb. For a little bit more detail on augments, have a look at the video on the imperfect tense, which explains them a bit further. The stem is then strengthened by the addition of a sigma at the end of that stem, as happens with the future tense, and the same rules about the final consonant plus sigma occasionally changing to a different one apply. For a bit more detail on those, again, have a look at the future tense video where they're explained a bit more thoroughly, but you can see they are summarized here. So pi or phi plus sigma becomes psi, kappa or gamma plus sigma turns into a psi, and zeta or theta followed by a sigma tends to turn into a sigma. There are a few verbs that don't do that. This tense has its own endings as well, and you can see most of them have an alpha in, which helps to recognize the tense as well. So we've got the augment, we've got the sigma, and all apart from the he, she ending have an alpha in it as well. So we've got these endings here, as, amen, ate, an, to recognize this tense. They're not very different to the imperfect tense endings, except with that alpha put in to replace the vowel that would normally be there. So let's see how we make this, putting all those things together. So we take pao, a straightforward verb. We've got our augment, our stem, pow, the sigma to strengthen that stem, and then the alpha for the I ending to turn it into I stopped. If we take akuo, I hear, if we want to make that aorist, I heard, the augment alpha turns into an eta to make the augment here. The stem ku stays the same, sigma and alpha again. Dioko, I chase. We've got an augment, which is the epsilon, the stem dioke, but kappa plus sigma turns into psi, and then the ending alpha. And then finally, combining those last two ideas, elpisto, I hope, to become aorist, the epsilon turns into an eta as the augment. The stem stays the same, except zeta plus sigma leaves us with just sigma, and then we've got the alpha as the ending again. For you to practice that, here are some examples to use. So we've got 8 Greek words to translate into English. This is checking your recognition of those endings, checking you're getting the person right, watching out for these eta augments especially, and a few like egrapsen, edioxa, where the sigma has turned into a psi or a psi there. And then some for you to translate from English into Greek. All the vocabulary is given underneath for both of these exercises, so that's there to help you. And again, when you're writing into Greek, take the things you've hopefully learned from this one, checking the augment, checking adding that sigma, and whether that changes into a different consonant there. If you pause the video and have a go at these, then we'll go over the answers when you restart in a moment. Okay, and here we've got the answers to those practice words. They're up on the screen, so I won't run through each one individually. You can have a look through and check how you got on yourselves. A couple of things to flag, so hopefully on this side especially, akuo, so the augment needs to be an eta at the front. ediuxa, so the kasai coming in for kappa plus sigma. Grapsater, the same idea, so pi plus sigma, phi plus sigma turns into psi there. So that is the weak aorist covered. As a final way to check your understanding, here are some sentences which include first or weak aorist verbs, where you're also having to use your knowledge of nouns and a bit of vocabulary as well. Most of the verbs are the ones that you've been using in those practice exercises. Fulasso in number 3 means guard. Klepto in number 5 means steal. And hopefully this word in number 3, you can work out if you get rid of the ending, it is the English word that it is the equivalent of. So again, if you pause, have a go at these sentences, and then we'll run through them in just a moment. Okay, so here are the answers to those sentences. Hehera tungunaikon ekusen. Hera heard the women, so akuo here, augment eta, we got our sigma and the n ending with the new on the end because it finishes the sentence. Number 2, ara tas epistolas egrapsas. Did you write the letters? So you wrote the letters, but turning into a question becomes did you write the letter? So that's how we form a question version for the aorist tense or simple past in English. Tous elephantas effulaxamen. We guarded the elephants. Again, you need to use the ending amen to make sure we've got we doing this verb because the elephants are accusative and can't be the subject. Ho Achilleus ton Hectora edioxen. Achilles chased Hector, famously obviously from the Iliad. And tas biblus uk eclepsa. I did not steal the book. So again, aorist, but we've added this negative uk in, which turns into did not steal when we use the English simple past for that. So that's the first aorist covered. Let's now have a look at the second, or strong, as it's sometimes called, aorist. Just like in English, this always involves a change to the stem of the verb. And sometimes that could be a small change. So ballo, I throw, becomes eballon, I threw. The only change is one of the lambdas in the stem is gone. Sometimes that change is a bit more significant, more letters alter. So lambano, the stem lamban, becomes just lab for the aorist elabon. So it's often called a telescope stem because you can see some of the letters there, but we've lost some of them. The mu, the alpha, and the nu are gone. And then just like we saw with go and went in English, there are some verbs. Treco here is one example. I run becomes edramon, so the stem trek for the present becomes dram for the aorist. And you might have seen from these aorists the other two things we need to remember about this. There always needs to be an augment still. These all happen to be epsilon. It could be the alpha or epsilon turning to eta option as well. And then we need some endings as well. And these endings actually match the endings for the imperfect tense. On, es, omen, ete, on. So you might say, well, hang on, it's got an augment. It's got the same endings as the imperfect tense. How do we know it's not the imperfect tense? And the answer is that stem. The imperfect tense uses the normal present stem. So here we've got eballon with the double lambda. I was throwing. Eballon, I threw with the single lambda. Definitely aorist. So it's that stem is what will tell you the difference between a verb being imperfect and aorist. And as we've mentioned, this tense always has an augment. It is a past tense. One extra thing we'll say with this is how we use an augment with a compound verb. So a compound verb, one of those ones where a prefix is put at the front to change or alter the meaning slightly. So ace ballo, we've seen ballo means throw. Ace ballo would mean I throw in. If we make a compound verb, a past tense, aorist, or it could be imperfect, then that augment comes after the prefix. So we've got the prefix ace, then the augment and then the stem vowel and the ending on. Sometimes this means the vowel at the end of the prefix disappearing. So apo ballo, I throw away. Apo eballon, you might expect to be the aorist, but the o disappears there. There are a few verbs which nearly always have a prefix which doesn't affect their meaning. So apopnesco, I die, nearly always has this apo on the front as a prefix. Here is a list of a few verbs that have second aorists. Whichever textbook you're using and practicing will probably give you its own list, which might well include these and maybe a few others as well. There's more than just these 8 in Greek, but that's enough to use and start with and get used to it. And you can see we've got some straightforward changes. Lambano to lab, we've seen. Apopnesco, you can see nesk turns into than, the theta and the nu are still there. This is the one where we've got this prefix apo becoming ape. Ballo we've mentioned. Lego turns into apon. You can see that doesn't look very much like the present tense at all. Ago actually doubles up to agag for its aorist stem. That alpha then turns into an eta when we use the augment. So ergagon is the aorist of ago. Treco turning into edramon, we've already mentioned. Estheo turning to ephagon. So I eat turns into I ate. You can see that one changes quite a lot in English too. Manthano turning into emathon. I learnt. And often English derivations come from these aorist stems as well. So this math is maths, mathematics, and so on. And phag is the phage in various biological terms as well. So another chance for you to practice these. So we've got some in Greek for you to translate into English, and then again some to translate the other way around from English into Greek. You might find you need to go back to look at that list of verbs and the different stems and the meanings to check this. You might want to write that down and use that as you are practicing your way through this. Watch out, this one has got a prefix on it, and again there's one where you need to add a prefix when you're translating into Greek as well. So if you pause, have a go at these, and then we'll go through these in a moment. Okay, and here we've got the answers to those. So we'll run through these very quickly as they help reinforce these stems. Alabomen, we took. Ephagete, you ate. Ergagen, he or she led. Edrames, you ran. Apethanon, I or they, because remember we can't tell the difference between that ending, died. Apete, you said. Ebale, he or she threw. And ace ergagon, I or they, led in with that prefix. So this is ago, ergagon the aorist, and ace on the front. She learned emathe, they took. Elabon, you ate. Ephages, we threw. Ebalomen, you died. Apethanete, so this is, remember the augment comes after the apo and the omicron disappears. Ephages, ace edramon, so again the prefix ace, then the augment then that aorist stem dram, and the ending for I on, and he ate ephage, and again you could have a nu on the end there. Lastly then, to practice this, we've got some example sentences again. These all use verbs that we've just practiced. One of them has got a prefix on. Vocabulary wise, hopefully most words here are straightforward. There are quite a lot of names involved. In number 5, this is another animal, and again the stem is exactly the same as the English word if you ignore the ending on, so that should get you there. Again, if you pause, and then we will go over these. So, welcome back. Here's number 1. He Cleopatra ton oinon elaben. Cleopatra took the wine. Number 2, this is one where we need to learn, need to use that ending omen to definitely mean we. So we learnt in the agora, in the market. Hosocrates tois Athenaios apen. Socrates spoke to the Athenians. Ara tous paidas ace ten oikian ace egages. Did you lead the children into the house? So we've got the prefix ace on the verb, and it's also used as a prefix, as an actual preposition here as well. And number 5, holeon ton camelon ephagen, the lion ate the camel. Hopefully this has clarified how the aorist tense works for you. So 2 forms, a first and a second form. The first one, which has an augment, a sigma, and an ending with an alpha in. The second, which uses this completely different stem, which means you need to spend a bit of time practicing and learning those stems. However, once you've done that, that is this tense covered. For further information about Greek and learning on other grammar points, do visit our website, www.greeksummerschool.org. Thank you and goodbye.